Imagine this: a quiet suburban neighborhood, an HOA security guard, and an altercation that spirals into chaos. It starts with a routine confrontation, but what happens next will leave you stunned. In one shocking moment, an HOA security guard pulls a gun, escalating the situation in a way no one could have predicted. And just minutes later, something even crazier happens. Armed SWAT officers storm the HOA's headquarters. You might think this sounds like a scene from a tense action movie, but it's all too real. The tension between entitled residents, frustrated HOA staff, and security guards has been building for months, but no one expected things to go this far. The story we're diving into today comes straight from the popular Reddit thread, *entitled people*, where this insane story unfolds. Who are the key players in this drama? The HOA security guard, caught in a tough spot, the residents who pushed the boundaries of entitlement, and the authorities who responded with an overwhelming show of force. What led to this intense moment, and what happened when the SWAT team arrived? Stay tuned, because this is only the beginning of an unbelievable tale that will keep you on the edge of your seat. You won't believe what happens next. To understand what led to this explosive moment, we need to rewind a bit. The neighborhood had always been a quiet, tight-knit community. The HOA, those neighborhood enforcers, were supposed to ensure everything ran smoothly. But over time, things started to change. Some residents began pushing the boundaries, ignoring rules and creating tension. The security guard, a relatively young guy named Dave, was new to the job. He'd always tried to keep the peace, but there were a few particularly entitled homeowners who made his life difficult. They knew how to push buttons, how to manipulate the system, and they didn't hesitate to make Dave's job a nightmare. It all came to a head one evening when one of these residents, Mr. Palmer, was caught violating a key rule. He'd parked his oversized RV in the driveway, something clearly prohibited by the HOA's guidelines. When Dave approached him to ask him to move it, things escalated quickly. Mr. Palmer was furious. He refused to cooperate, throwing around insults and calling Dave incompetent. But Dave, trying to keep things calm, stood his ground. That's when Palmer started threatening him. Something snapped in Dave. What was supposed to be a simple confrontation turned into a standoff. But the real shocker came when Palmer made a call. And not just any call, he called at HOA's office, demanding action from the higher-ups. Minutes later, the unthinkable happened. Minutes later, a figure emerged from the shadows. Gary, the head of HOA security. Known for his zero-tolerance approach, he had a reputation for being heavy-handed. Gary wasn't just a guard. He was someone with an ego to match. When he arrived, his first words were directed at Dave, not Palmer. "You let this get out of hand," Gary sneered, dismissing the tension in the air as if it were nothing. Palmer stood there, smirking, sensing the power he had in the moment. What Dave didn't know was that Gary had a history with the HOA, a personal one. Gary was tied to certain influential figures within the board, and he was about to make some dangerous decisions. As tensions flared, Dave could feel it. The moment was slipping out of control. Palmer's smirk widened, but he had no idea that a storm was brewing, one that would turn this suburban standoff into something much darker. And that storm was getting closer by the second. Gary's arrival only escalated the situation. His presence seemed to fuel Palmer's bravado even more. With a sneer, Gary approached Dave, but he wasn't focused on the safety of the situation. He was looking for an excuse to flex his authority. "Step aside," Gary barked, shoving past Dave without hesitation. "I'll handle this." As the situation with Mr. Palmer intensified, Dave's nerves were shot. He didn't expect the altercation to go this far. He was just a security guard. He wasn't trained for this kind of confrontation. Palmer's threats became more personal, more aggressive. The neighbor wasn't just angry about the RV. He was angry about the HOA's growing control over every aspect of his life. He'd been dealing with petty disputes for years, and now his frustration boiled over. Palmer's call to the HOA office had set something in motion. While Dave was trying to remain calm, He had no idea that Palmer's connection with certain high-ranking HOA members was about to turn the situation into a full-blown crisis. The HOA, desperate to avoid any more complaints or bad press, decided to send backup. But this wasn't just any backup. They called in someone from the security firm the HOA had hired, someone who didn't know the first thing about de-escalation. Dave, already rattled, tried to protest. "Gary, this is getting out of hand. We need to calm down before." But Gary cut him off, a sharp glare in his eyes. "Don't lecture me, kid. I know what I'm doing." The tension was unbearable. Palmer, seeing Gary's aggression, stood even taller. The power dynamics were shifting. What had started as a small confrontation between a frustrated resident and a nervous security guard was now spiraling into something dangerous. Dave's heart raced as he glanced over at Palmer, who was practically daring him to act. The situation had gone way beyond simple enforcement of rules. This was personal. As Gary got closer to Palmer, there was a sudden shift in the air. Something wasn't right. Dave could feel it, the unmistakable chill that came with real danger. Palmer's smirk twisted into something darker as he reached into his jacket pocket. The way he moved, slow and deliberate, made Dave's stomach tighten. Was he reaching for a weapon? In that moment, the tension snapped. The unmistakable sound of sirens filled the air, but it wasn't the local police. No, this was something bigger, something more intense. The distant but unmistakable roar of a SWAT team's approach grew louder by the second. Dave's eyes widened. What was happening? Who had called for the SWAT team? Palmer's connection to the HOA had just gone from a petty squabble to something much more serious. The closer the sirens came, the more the reality of the situation set in. This was no longer about an RV or parking violations. This was a standoff, an armed, high-stakes conflict. As the first of the SWAT vehicles appeared in the distance, Dave's mind raced. Was this the HOA's way of handling things? Or had someone pulled strings to escalate things this far? The storm was closing in fast, and there was no turning back now. The next moments would decide everything. Would anyone survive this nightmare unscathed, or had that HOA's attempt to keep control just gone too far? As the sirens grew louder, a strange sense of dread settled over Dave. He tried to process everything happening around him, but it felt like time had slowed. The SWAT vehicles weren't just an intimidating show of force, they were a sign that things had gotten way out of hand. As they rolled closer, Dave felt a cold sweat break out across his back. What had started as a simple parking dispute had spiraled into an armed standoff, and now the authorities were descending on them all. But just as Dave prepared himself for what was to come, another sound cut through the chaos, an unexpected voice, sharp and authoritative. "Hold it right there." Dave spun around, startled. Standing in the doorway of the HOA headquarters was none other than the HOA president, Mrs. Calloway, a woman known for her icy demeanor and no-nonsense attitude. She wasn't supposed to be here. No one had seen her in months. She rarely showed her face unless things were really bad. Her sudden appearance sent a shockwave through the tense scene. "Mrs. Calloway?" Dave asked, his voice shaky. "What's going on? Why is the SWAT team here?" Mrs. Calloway didn't answer at first. She simply stared at Gary, her expression unreadable. Then she turned her gaze to Palmer, who was still standing smugly, seemingly untouchable. "You've all been played," she finally said, her voice low but firm. This was never about parking violations. It was about much more than that. Dave blinked, trying to make sense of her words. What did she mean? How had this all been orchestrated? Was Palmer the mastermind behind this? His mind raced as Mrs. Calloway continued. This entire situation was a setup, she revealed, her tone carrying a weight that made everyone in the vicinity go still. The HOA wasn't just enforcing rules, they were being manipulated from the inside. Dave's heart skipped a beat. He could feel the ground shifting beneath him. The stakes had just gone through the roof. It wasn't just a fight for control over the neighborhood anymore. It was something bigger. Someone had been playing all of them, pulling strings, and now the real game was about to begin. And it wasn't just about security anymore. It was about power and who would walk away with it. The revelation hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Dave's mind was spinning. A setup, he whispered, trying to piece together what Mrs. Calloway was saying. Not just any setup, she continued, her eyes narrowing at Gary. Gary's been working with someone from the HOA board. They've been making deals under the table, manipulating situations to their advantage. The parking violations, the disputes, everything. It was all part of their plan to escalate tensions. And now they're using you, Dave, to clean up the mess. Gary's face went pale, his usual confidence cracking for the first time. He didn't speak, but his eyes darted around, looking for a way out. Palmer, however, was still standing there, a smirk on his face, as if he knew exactly what was happening. "Wait," Dave said, his heart pounding. "But what does the SWAT team have to do with all this?" Mrs. Calloway let out a sharp breath. That's the real twist. They wanted the HOA to be seen as a legitimate target for a larger operation. It wasn't just about a parking issue or a power grab. This whole thing was a test, Dave. A way to create a distraction, to pull the police and SWAT in so they could get away with something bigger. And the person behind it all, she paused for effect, her voice dropping to a whisper. It's Palmer. He's been feeding them inside information for months. Dave's eyes widened. The man who had started this whole mess, the one whose RV had been the spark for everything, was the mastermind. Palmer laughed, stepping forward. "You really think I'm the bad guy here? I was just playing the game. The HOA's own security didn't just fail, they made things worse. I just made sure things went the way I wanted." The sudden roar of a helicopter overhead interrupted them, signaling the arrival of even more armed units. But it wasn't SWAT. It wasn't the police either. As the helicopter hovered, it dropped down a banner, a piece of paper with a simple message. Asterisk, all of you are expendable. Your game is over. Asterisk. A chill ran down Dave's spine. This wasn't just about a neighborhood anymore. It was something much larger. The true puppet master was yet to be revealed, and suddenly, the stakes had gone far beyond what any of them could have imagined. As the banner fluttered in the breeze, a sense of impending doom loomed over them all. Someone somewhere was watching, and the game was far from over.